speaker series tonight, featuring former student James Innes and Max Wilson over there. James graduated from St John's in 2012, 12 years ago. And I brought a little surprise for him here, in case he's forgotten his extended essay.
Yeah. Which I'm going to talk.
There you go. I mean, James did his extended essay on the miners' strike, and a wonderful piece of work which he received an A for. And I must say, the special feature of the Innes family, there were 4 members of the family, 3 girls, and James as well. And all 4 of them did IB history at St John's, and all 4 of them got a 7 in higher level IB history, a unique achievement. And there was even an article written for the IB magazine about that, because it's such a special achievement at the time. Jesus.
And on top of that,
yes,
who is their teacher?
Oh yes, three of them were with me, and 1 with a former history teacher, Mrs. Dickon, who is now living in Australia. She's in her late 70s and enjoying her retirement under the fierce Australian sun.
yeah, and to complete a bit the history of the family, the father of James and the rest of the sisters, he was here as a pastor. He is an Anglican priest. But then eventually he became the bishop of the European region. And when I tell people back in Mexico that I used to have the children of a bishop, they cannot believe it. Because Mexicans, most of us used to be Catholic, and of course the bishops in the Catholic Church cannot marry. But well, on top of the story of the brothers, well, the brother and the sisters, Ruth, she got the perfect score, I confirmed today, and the perfect score of the IB is 45 points.
Yeah.
Now, I have to give a bit of the detail, because Jane was telling me that initially she had gotten 44 points, but then she fought for
More satisfied with 44.
So she fought for the 1 point, and indeed she got it, and so she got the perfect score. And the other sister, Rebecca, also, she did extremely well, and then Philippa is the youngest one, also did extremely well. And all of them are very well located so far in their different locations. James lives in Paris, Ruth next to Cambridge, Rebecca, you said close to Oxford, and Philippa in Edinburgh, indeed. So we are very proud of having had them, all of them here in the school. And I think it is a real pleasure that James is with us, accompanied by another role model student like Max, who is one of our best students, as well as Emma. Emma is also here, but as a spectator. But Max is a very well-rounded student. We are very proud of having him also together with James tonight.
I will just leave James as an extended essay.
Yeah,
James's father and I were like passing ships in the night. When I first started here 21 years ago, we used to cycle from the station, and I'd be cycling from the station, and James's father would be walking to the station to catch a train, and would often pass each other every morning. Just passing. Anyway, I'll leave that on there.
Thanks.
So, James, welcome.
Thanks. Very cool. Very cool. Thank you. I haven't seen that in years. So, yeah, well, it's a real privilege to be here this evening. Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, a big thank you to Mr. McDonald, Dr. Jesus for inviting me along. And it's funny being in this area here of the school, because this was the 8th grade corridor back in my day. And I used to have religion in here with Mr. Delacruz, social studies there. And as the middle school student council president, I'd come down here every day and do something rather awkward, which was go into the office next door and read out the daily bulletin over the tannoy system. And what that involved was also reading out to the whole school who was on detention that day. Poor people whose names I had to read out. But that was quite tricky for me with pronunciation as well. So, you know, there was a child whose name was spelled Maceij, and I'm like, is that Maciej or Macaij? Anyway, got to the end of the year, the boy then came and told me his name was Mache. And there you go. And there was another rather sad moment, because there was a boy, an American 7th grader called Jamie, who would always have to go to detention, where a Spanish 7th grader called Jaime would always get off scot-free, because he mispronounced the name Jaime. And I think it's this rich international variety that makes St John's a very, very special place. And looking back after first attending St John's, I started here in 2005, so nearly 19 years ago. I do think that the diversity of the school really does two big things. I think first, St John's celebrates the diversity of its students in a way that reaffirms their national identity, or maybe their national identities, but also in a way that celebrates diversity and gives you an international blueprint for the rest of your life. That's certainly how I felt while I was here at school. So firstly, it reaffirms your national identity. So you might have dual or even triple nationality. I've now got dual, I've got Belgian nationality, just before Brexit. Yes. But in the first 11 years of my life, I lived in a part of the UK just near Newcastle. I'm a big Newcastle United fan. And I lived in this former mining village, I think, which is why I did my extended essay on the miners' strike against Thatcher in the 80s. And this is, the classic kind of local white, 99% of the people there were very much born and bred there. And so it's such a different environment from the one that I then moved into when I was 11 years old. So when I was there, I didn't particularly feel like I fitted in, but then I came, and I didn't feel particularly British. Then I came here, and everyone's talking with American accents. And in the first week here, while I was at middle school, probably the prettiest girl in the school came up to me, and she said, "Oh my gosh, your accent is so cute." And I was like, yes, I love being British. British is sexy, this is great. So I never really felt so British as I did when I actually first came here. I thought, as well, every year, I don't know if you still do International Day? Yep. Love International Day, best celebration of the year. So I love the fact that you could eat lots of delightful cuisine from various different parts of the world. But my favourite part of International Day was actually doing the parade with the other British people there and marching to "We Are the Champions," or sometimes "We Will Rock You" by Queen. I was like, yes, this is great, I get to celebrate being a British person. Also, being a Brit meant that I was probably the only person in my IB history class who really understood Mr. McDonald's humour. Trust me, he's reasonably funny. So St John's can, I think it can reaffirm your national identity, but then it also gives you this international blueprint upon which you can live your life. And yes, I think within the melting pot of nationalities, it's important not to lose your sense of where you come from initially. And I found that amongst many of my peers that they kind of didn't really know where they were from, quite confused third culture kids. I think it's really important to retain that national identity. But then also the fact that St John's can make you this global citizen really does give you the blueprint for the rest of your life. I think rubbing shoulders every day with people from across the world, building respect for other people's cultures. One of my favourite moments at St John's was looking out on graduation day and seeing all the different flags of all my classmates. It's such a special experience, and you might never get another experience quite like that. And I think the impact of growing up in this sort of environment really helps prepare you for later life, to live in 3 different settings. So like a very local setting, maybe a setting common to where you're from, a very foreign setting, more adventurous place, or like an expatriate lifestyle that you might live in the future. And I've lived in all 3 since I graduated from here, and I've felt confident and equipped because of my time here at St John's. So if you return to quite a local setting, having been at St John's or an international school, I think you do bring that kind of je ne sais quoi to the kind of the local environment. After graduating from St John's, I moved to Scotland for 9 years, and I went into teaching, and I taught in many of the roughest parts of Glasgow, East End Glasgow, and I was the only person on the staff team who wasn't from Glasgow. And I think what that did was it really broadened the horizons of the kids that I was teaching. And then within the school, we also had lots of immigrants from Somalia, from Afghanistan, and then lots of immigrants from Nigeria and China and places like that. And bringing an international ethos into the classroom and celebrating their culture and celebrating their languages, that really made them feel very valued in a way that they hadn't in local life generally. And I think the St John's experience generally also makes you much more comfortable in quite foreign cultures. So when I was in Glasgow, I met a lady who was doing her Erasmus from Sciences Po, Paris. So she was just there for a year, and she'd studied in Paris, but she was originally from Ghana. So we met, we started going out, and then we did 4 years of long distance between Glasgow and Paris, which included COVID. And I proposed to her in Stockholm in 2020, because Sweden was the only country that opened up its borders for people to travel to, which was great. So we got engaged and then didn't see each other again until the wedding, 9 months later. And we had 2 weddings, and the first was in Ghana. And what with it being COVID, it was difficult for a lot of my family to get over there. So I was one of only 2 white people at my wedding, and I was in a very authentically Ghanaian context. I was getting married in this ceremony with loads of Ghanaians around me, all speaking their local language, Tree. The ceremony mainly being conducted in a language I didn't understand, me being asked questions in this language, and you just got to go with the flow, and you've got to just enjoy the experience. And I think that's what St John's does as well. St John's helps you to become much more adaptable to living in foreign cultures. But I think also if you live in Belgium and you're not a French speaker, or you're not Belgian, it's necessary to integrate a little bit into Belgian society and go beyond the kind of expat bubble that you have in this particular community as well. And that will help you in later life for sure, which it did with me. And then obviously being at St John's really helps you to be very comfortable in expatriate, maybe bilingual settings in the future. So after I got married, I moved to Paris, and now half the week I teach English in a bilingual international school to generally French-speaking kids, and the other half of the week I run a YouTube channel and a website where I teach French to English-speaking kids. And being in Paris, I'm very much prepared for that experience because I lived in this particular world. So I think it's difficult to know when you're a student here where you want to end up. You might know the field of study that you want to end up in, but you might have no idea what sort of environment that you want to end up in when you're older. Do you want to stay in an expatriate world? Do you want to go back to a local environment, kind of rediscover your national roots? Or do you want to go somewhere more adventurous where you are very much the foreigner in the context? But wherever you end up, by fate or by choice, I do really think that time in St John's prepares you very well for that. Well, this year St John's turns 60 years old. Very cool. And it's generally a big year for changing the decade. The Eurostar turns 30 next week. And I turn 30 next week. There you go. Which is a bit scary. Yeah, I was born the same year that the Eurostar opened. It's also the 50th anniversary of ABBA winning Eurovision. Yeah, so in a couple of weeks' time, I'll be hosting a big party as Eurovision is broadcast out from Sweden because they won it last year. I am a little bit of a nerd in the Eurovision area, so the first thing my wife and I did after we got engaged was we downed a bottle of champagne and we went off to the ABBA museum. Yeah, of course, ABBA won Eurovision with possibly the most famous Eurovision song ever written, Waterloo, when Napoleon did surrender. I mean, it really should be Braine-l'Alleud, where Napoleon did surrender, but you know, Wellington's headquarters were in Waterloo. And as Churchill said, history is written by the winners. In fact, Napoleon losing here, it kind of kick-started the era that's covered by the IB Modern European History course. And I'm not trying to flatter Mr. McDonald here after saying he's reasonably funny, but no other course I've ever studied, even at university, has given me as much of an understanding of the world we live in as IB history, for sure. And just by the way, I scraped an IB history, 7 in IB history. I was right on the borderline, but they were.
7 is a firm 7.
I was bang on. I was a 66% 7. So there you go. But what I think history does, alongside many IB subjects, such as Dr. Jesus's theory of knowledge or philosophy, is that it gives you a critical mindset. And alongside giving me an international outlook, being a critical thinker is definitely the most important thing that St. John's has taught me. You learn not to take things at face value. You don't believe the latest rumour. You don't necessarily go with the crowd, follow the crowd, but go with the latest theory. Last weekend I had the pleasure of touring the International Olympic Committee headquarters in Lausanne, in Switzerland. So we saw where the guy called Pierre de Coubertin started the modern Olympic movement. And we also met the Director General of the IOC, who's a Belgian. He's called Christophe de Kepper. And it turns out his parents lived their last days here in Waterloo. Really, really interesting, really humble, down-to-earth guy. And yeah, I did this for my extended essay. I think for my internal assessment,
League of Nations,
I did the Olympic movement.
yeah, Olympic movement, that's right.
Yeah, so I did that, so that was cool.
Because you'd been to Geneva, I think, and
Yeah,
you'd
Lausanne,
been to a museum there,
Yeah.
and you used some of the documents for that on your IA.
Good memory. There you go.
History teacher.
Got a good memory. Yeah, that's it.
For certain things.
So yeah, and my topic was, why did Pierre de Coubertin
That's right.
re-spark the Olympic movement? And yeah, I did most of the research looking at original documents in the Olympic Museum.
Top mark as well.
Thanks.
Did you tell him that you wrote a letter of assessment on him?
Did I tell Pierre de Coubertin himself? He's long gone.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
sadly.
Okay.
But
I'm sorry,
otherwise
you
it
said you
would've
went
done.
to, okay.
Yeah, no, so he restarted the Olympic movement. The first Olympics were in 1896.
Oh,
So
I see why
yeah,
he's gone.
and it's funny because he's a Frenchman, right? So the French love celebrating this guy. Absolutely love him. Very patriotic. He's one of their big figures like Napoleon and Johnny Hallyday. He's a big dude. And you know, you watch Paris 2024's trailer on YouTube for the Olympics, and they boast about him. They say, yes, the games that bring the world together, no matter our creed or colour, we are faster, higher, stronger together. Merci, Pierre de Coubertin. Right? But you dig deeper into de Coubertin's motives, and you realise that he regenerated the Olympics for very different reasons. It wasn't to bring the world together. It was largely actually because he was really embarrassed by how unfit the French were, as demonstrated in their loss to Prussia in the War of 1870 to 71, which you study a great deal in IB history. Is anyone here French? Sorry, I mentioned 2 wars you've lost. I'm very sorry. Yeah, de Coubertin was so embarrassed by how unfit the French were, and he was an educator, and so he thought bringing in the Olympics would inspire young kids across the country to get fit, and so that the elite ones could go on and perform at Olympic level. And not only that, but Coubertin, he only wanted royalty and other very influential personalities to be invited to perform at the games. So if you weren't white, if you weren't aristocratic, and if you weren't male, he wasn't really bothered about having you along. So the 1900 games, which were the first held in Paris, had 1,318 athletes. 12 of them were women, and every single one of them was white. And so it's funny because we often think about Jesse Owens, the American sprinter, as being the guy who showed that the early Olympic movement defeated fascism with its liberal values, but that was well after Coubertin's time. Coubertin had very, very different ideals. And I think what the IB does, whether it's in humanities, whether it's in history or geography, whether it's in English, French literature, TOK, it really teaches you to dig deeper and to question. And I really think these are desperately needed skills in today's society. Because driven by largely quite a lazy use of social media, as well as really quite a scary postmodern, post-truth mantra, I think society is getting increasingly uncritical and as a result increasingly extreme. This is definitely the case in the States. American politics right now is seriously divided, and it's largely because people don't think very critically, right? People see on their social media, we've got some Americans, I can see some smiling. Yeah, all right, here we go.
Well, the Brits are going to tell us about divided society. Okay, go on. Carry on.
There we go.
Carry on. Yeah, everything's fine in Britain.
It's the same, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's America's a very clear case of this, but it's happening in Europe as well. So, right, in the States, you basically got two different sides of the spectrum, which are just getting increasingly extreme, because what people are doing is that you've got everyone is focused on certain views, and therefore they camp out in those particular views, right? So if you're on the right wing, right, you're Republican, you might be evangelical, you are anti-abortion, you're anti-LGBT, you're pro-gun, basically. And if you're on the other side, right, if you're on the left side, you're Democrat, you are pro-LGBT, you're pro-abortion, anti-gun, pro-Black Lives Matter, all this sort of stuff. It's very, very, very difficult for anyone to stand out from one of those camps. It's very difficult without getting bashed and criticised. If you're in this particular camp, on the left, and you object to certain values, right, even though the left claims to be the tolerant side, right, they're the intolerant ones, we're the tolerant guys, if you step out on one particular view, you get shot down, right, with opinions, with cancel culture, okay? And I find that incredibly ironic, right, that the tolerant side can be so intolerant. We say, okay, you're very welcome on our side if you are one of the minorities, if you're LGBT, if you're black, any of these things. But if you differ with us on a little opinion, boom, you're out. And what that's done essentially is that people who've been in the middle have been pushed this way, or people that have been on the right have been pushed even further right. Society's increasingly divided. Right, so that's the States, but it's not just the States. I see this in the UK quite a lot, and I think cancel culture is one of the big ways in which this is manifesting itself in quite a dangerous way to the suppression of freedom of speech. And so what I'm saying is that the IB teaches you to be critical. It teaches you to have much more nuanced views, and I think that critical thinking side of the IB really flies in the face of cancel culture. Right, in the UK right now, we've got a few people under the microscope. The big one is J.K. Rowling. And I find it deeply ironic that the actor who played Harry Potter has basically cancelled the author of Harry Potter because he considers her views to be transphobic. I mean, maybe he's got a case. I think some of the views that J.K. Rowling shares are pretty extreme, and she should show more compassion to the LGBT community. But she's also defending a view that the liberal elite haven't really considered, and therefore she's just getting shot down. So she lives in Scotland. I lived in Scotland for 9 years. Scotland is more progressive, in my opinion, than any other nation in the world. Progressive, right? In Scotland, trans women who go through puberty as men and then transition if they commit a crime, they're sent to women-only prisons. It's also a country where a hate crime law has just been passed, which means that if you offend a trans woman for being a trans woman, then that's a hate crime. But you offend a woman for being a woman, that's not a hate crime. And she's saying, J.K. Rowling is basically defending the cis woman perspective, something that feminists of the 1980s, 1990s would have just been totally in favour of what she's saying. And I think it's deeply ironic, like I said, that you've got the tolerant camp here that are criticising and bashing and cancelling her. And I think it's also really, really dangerous, especially when hate crime laws are coming in like they are. It's really, really dangerous against freedom of speech. And what I'd like to say is that the IB, with its focus on being a critical thinker, means that it challenges us to go a lot deeper on these issues. It means we don't just follow the crowd, the liberal elite crowd, or maybe this crowd on the right here, but it means that we should be questioning. It means that we shouldn't be afraid to dig deep and to research and get really well-informed opinions that do challenge the consensus, that do challenge the status quo. Right? Now, don't get me wrong, sometimes removing someone's platform is necessary. 2 or 3 of you will have been at my graduation, the class of 2012, and we sang a song by R. Kelly, I Am the Greatest. This guy's been sent to prison for 30 years for various forms of abuse. And, but listen, maybe we should have questioned a guy who believed he could fly. And that's partly my point, that we need to question the heroes that we worship, but I also don't think we should be following the crowd and cancelling them as soon as they say one thing that doesn't fit the current consensus, especially if they wrote all the Harry Potter books. Yes, we owe those people a bit. Freedom of speech it's an increasingly fragile entity, and so I encourage all of us to make a point in using it. If you have well-researched, valid beliefs that challenge today's society, will you share them? Okay. 6 months ago in France, having a pro-Palestinian, not pro-Hamas, pro-Palestinian rally was illegal. Literally, pro-Palestinian gatherings happened, police broke them up, arrested a lot of people. The Star of David was projected on the Eiffel Tower. And generally, French public opinion was very pro-Israel and very dismissive of any critical thinking on this topic. Now, one paper I wrote in university, doing international relations, was how can we solve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict in 3,000 words, right? But I could tell at the time, if we are to give Israel all of this backing, they are going to use it as carte blanche. And they have. They literally have. We gave uncritical backing to a very, very dominant power, and you see what's happened. And so we need to have a much more critical perspective on these sorts of issues and not be drawn to one extreme. Whether it's polarizing social media, whether it's cancel culture, whether it's a situation around a controversial war, people too often follow the crowd because it's the lazy, easy, people-pleasing, non-confrontational thing to do. So let's not be one of those people. If you've got well-researched, critically thought-out views on a controversial subject, don't be afraid to share them and use the freedom of speech that you've got. Because it's a hallmark of history, it's a hallmark of democracy, that society progresses, not when we've all got the same views. Is society going to progress today because all these people have got exactly the same views? And all these people have got exactly the opposite views? No. It's going to be when people step out and they challenge. That's how society progresses. You look at historical figures that we celebrate. You look at Jesus, you look at Galileo, you look at Martin Luther King. They stepped out and they challenged. And that's how we move forward. So be someone who questions. Be someone who's happy sitting in the grey a little bit, comfortable disagreeing with others, but also do so from a place of respect and grace. Because when people are criticizing each other these days, they're just bashing each other. All right? And social media feeds this. Let's respectfully disagree with each other and be comfortable hanging out with people who we disagree with, not sticking in our camps. The world needs critical thinkers who are happy sharing a podium with people they disagree with. Whereas universities at the minute are saying, no, we're going to cancel that person coming to our university because we don't agree with him. The university is really going to be those places of free thought that they've always been, if that's the case. And so yeah, studying the IB for me allowed me to develop a critical mindset. It allowed me to question Pierre de Coubertin's motives for starting the Olympic movement. But I didn't go around Lausanne the other week and start throwing his statues into Lake Geneva, right? Because he was a racist and a sexist. I'm actually very thankful to him because he started the Olympic movement again, and they're coming to my home city this summer. So I planned a staycation around the Olympics. Spent €1,000 on 30 tickets, which I thought was good value, but my wife was horrified. And I do think there's nothing quite like the Olympics to bring the world together. There's nothing like Eurovision to bring Europe together in many ways. In both, you find a celebration of national identity alongside a celebration of being global citizens. Sounds a bit like St. John's. And the Olympics is a sporting event. Eurovision's a singing contest. And that brings me on to my final brief point, that there's nothing really quite like the sports and the arts to bring joy to people's life. The experiences that St. John's offers in both of these areas is really quite unique, especially compared with the intense focus on academics that you find in many other educational systems in this part of the world. And 90% of the time, no offense, academic teachers, 90% of the time when I think back to my time at St. John's, my mind wanders to sporting events. How I scored the crucial goal against Athens as we went on to win the football ISSTs. How I was beaten to gold for the JV track and field 800 meters by 1/100th of a second. My opponent, he saw the photo finish, he came over to me and he said, "I beat you by a nipple." I was crushed. There's nothing quite like sport that gets us accustomed to the crushing lows of life and the joyous highs. And the way that St. John's approach sport with their can-do approach centered on teamwork, it really leaves you with experiences and skills that last a lifetime. As do the chances you get to travel to neighboring cities. One of my most embarrassing moments ever was when I went to Frankfurt on a football trip, and I was being housed by this really lovely family. And the dad was clearly quite a successful businessman, and I went down to have a shower in the downstairs, and he was having a business meeting with the people who worked for him in the living room right next door. But after my shower, I couldn't open the bathroom door. I couldn't get out. And so my only escape wasn't to bash on the door because I didn't want to interrupt his meeting, but was to jump through the window, go into the shed, then towards the front door, hope that if I rang the bell, someone would let me in, only for the dad's business meeting to finish and all the people who worked for him to come out of the front door, being greeted by a skinny English teenager in his boxers. So I think the moments offered by sport at St. John's can be very formative, uplifting, sometimes embarrassing, but you really do think about them a lot. Like my mind still wanders to what happened if I'd dived on the line, the goal that I scored, you know. And the arts too can be a really beautiful way of bringing joy into your life. Nothing really beats the feeling of rehearsing a show for months and months, seeing everything come together at the last minute, and then performing an incredible production in costume under the lights to your friends and family. And it's funny, I saw that you had the Sound of Music taking place here in November. So I had the privilege of taking part in the first ever production in the Performing Arts Centre, which was the Sound of Music. And it was a school-wide Sound of Music, so it was first grade right up to 12th grade. And my oldest sister, the 45 one, she played my oldest sister. She played Liesel. Yeah? I am 16, going on 17. And I played her younger brother, Kurt. And at the auditions, everything was perfect. We lined up in perfect height order. A few months later, puberty had well and truly hit. And now my oldest sister was like this compared with all her younger siblings in the show. Not only that though, but my voice broke 2 weeks before the production. So The Hills Are Alive became The Hills Are Alive. It was deeply embarrassing again. So that kind of brings me to a close. I've been speaking for way too long. So just a few closing remarks before Max comes up and we have a nice conversation. I think when you graduate with St. John's, I know there's not many students here, it's great to have you, but stay in touch with other people, with friends. My best friend, Alex Wilton,
Yeah.
remember?
Yeah.
So he was best man at my wedding, and I was best man at his wedding, and now I'm godfather to his son. So stay in touch with friends, and with teachers, because you might get asked to be the guest speaker at St. John's 70th or 80th birthday. If you're not from Belgium, enjoy the drinking age being 16. Enjoy. You do learn a lot from being at the pub with friends, and prom and graduation are 2 of the best days you'll ever have, genuinely. And it's all in a legal drinking setting. Great. But more importantly, invest in and enjoy the experiences St. John's offers, whether it's a sports team, whether it's singing in the choir, helping out in student politics. They really do leave a great mark on your life. And they usually count for CAS, so 2 birds with 1 stone. Don't lose your national identity in the melting pot of an international context, and get to know and celebrate other people's cultures and traditions and languages. And lastly, question, engage, and research, and come to well-informed opinions, and be open to them changing. Perhaps most importantly, don't be afraid to speak out against the consensus, but do so in a respectful, gracious manner. Don't lose friends over differences in opinion. Be tolerant in the true sense of the word, because the world needs people who can be friends in spite of their differences in their nationality, in their practices, and in their opinions. The world needs people like that. Thank you very much for listening.
Well, now we welcome Max, who is going to have a conversation with James, and hopefully we can continue benefiting from all these life experiences. And I truly regret that we don't have a larger audience, because I think this is so valuable from all perspectives and for everybody. But that's a way of telling you perhaps we need to rethink how we format this speaker series and how we are going to promote them better and so on and so forth. But, okay, that's for the next. So let's continue. We welcome Max. As I said at the beginning, Max is a role model of a student, and in the very good sense, in a very holistic manner. And I think Max is very well respected, both by the students, his peers, as well as his teachers. So thank you, Max, for being with us as well.
Thank you so much.
Jesus, what's a code?
Yep.
So I'm just gonna ask James some questions, and then I was thinking that we could leave the floor to you guys, and you could ask him whatever you want. I don't know if you'll really have any questions with me, because I know most of you, but in case you do, when we get my day, do you have questions for me? Okay. So the first things I'm going to ask are specifically about the speech you just had.
Yeah, sure, go on.
So I really like what you said about the kind of foundational aspect that St. John's had and the IB had in terms of giving you like a critical mindset. And I was wondering, like, without the IB or St. John's, do you think you would be as critical? Do you think you would have gotten to that same place? Or
It's a good point.
Yeah.
If I'd stayed in the context that I'd been in, which was growing up in quite a small village in the northeast of the UK, no way. I mean, the St. John's experience broadens your horizons, just the fact of the international nature of it, and the travel that you can do as part of the school. And so in the UK you do A levels, right? And you knuckle down to about three subjects when you're 17 and 18, which is it's so few. It's so few.
at least you could avoid math?
Yeah, well, yeah.
Luckily, Dr. Collada's not here.
I was quite good at maths, but so the fact that you narrow it down so quickly and you don't retain that very kind of broad, holistic, thinking about different subjects vibe, yeah, I think I'd have struggled. I think I'd have struggled to have the same critical mindset.
I understand. I guess you could also credit too. I just thought of this,
Go on.
like Belgium being like such a hub for Europe as well, and you could just go pretty much anywhere. With the UK being, I guess, its own separate, you know,
Increasingly separate.
yeah. Well, I mean, in terms of geographically, not
Yeah,
like
yeah.
politically.
Yeah.
But yeah, being off of mainland Europe.
Yeah.
Another thing I was going to ask, and this was part of the later part of your speech, was when I heard that you're in The Sound of Music, I thought that was amazing because, first of all, not to make you feel old or anything, I was born in 2005. But I think
Sorry, man.
Yeah. I think
Wow.
I succeeded in that anyways.
Sheesh.
But yeah, this year, like you said, we did The Sound of Music. And I was actually in The Sound of
Oh,
Music.
cool. What did you do?
I played myself. I played the uncle. His name was Max.
Okay.
My name is Max, in case you guys didn't know.
He's not the traitor, is he?
Uh,
Not the traitor.
well, he's kind of in between.
Okay.
I'm not. Anyways, but I was gonna ask you, like, because I think the arts at St. John's, especially, it's so celebrated. We're like one of the best schools for the arts in Belgium. I would argue even in Europe, that's a little bit more bold. So like, it's come such a far way, like, long way. What was it like being like the first St. John's production? Like, how was your experience? How did you get into it? That's my question.
Yeah, sure. Dr. Jesus gave me a tour of the school, which I hadn't been in the performing arts centre since I left, and I was pretty shocked just by how big it was and what an incredible facility it is, and the fact that we had that in 2005. I mean, I know it kind of bankrupted the school. Sorry.
You're not supposed to say that.
So, but I was the beneficiary of that, and that was an incredible experience. Just auditioning for that in the first week or two, and yeah, auditions can be quite funny places because you can kind of see the process evolving. You're there to perform, and you're there to do your absolute best. But in the meantime, you know, the group of you that are auditioning for the same part just gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and you're like, oh, bye, I just met you.
What grade were you in? Like,
Sixth grade.
So was that the first year you were at St. John's?
Yeah, it was literally the first.
That's intense.
Second week I was here.
The second week you were here.
Yeah,
audition,
world
was that-
auditions. Yeah, it was intense.
I could not imagine that.
So you've just got to sing your best. I hope your voice doesn't break. And yeah, no, it was. But the whole process of it was really beautiful. It also allowed me to connect a lot with older students as well, which I thought was really nice. And they kind of took me under their wing,
Yeah.
which was very special. I had many nuns just taking care of me, which is quite nice.
Real nuns or the actors?
These are the actors, and yeah, there's a lot of camaraderie that can come about, whether it's through sport or whether it's through arts, particularly in doing a drama or doing a musical. And there's something so beautiful about once you're kind of learning your lines and then things are coming together and just the art of singing, it's very special. Very,
Yeah.
very special.
And at least for me personally, like, it all comes together when the applause happens and you like snap back to reality,
Yeah.
and it kind of sinks in.
Yeah.
Did you do any other plays after that? Because you were in sixth grade and you graduated from St. John's.
Yes, I did more sport, but I was in a couple of slightly random middle school productions. I did because I did drama up to 10th grade, and we did the kind of 24-hour
theater.
Do you still do that?
Yes, we do.
Love it, so cool.
Yeah,
Camp
it was
Open
fun.
Eye in the Pack, it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's a really cool one.
For those who don't know about it, it's basically this event we do in theater in 10th grade, and if you're in theater in 10th grade, and essentially you have like a whole day at school, and you are creating your own play from scratch. So you're devising theater, and then you actually get to spend the night at school with like the 11th and 12th graders who kind of like guide you. And the 12th graders can actually like pull the strings almost on what they want you to do, just because we have to like have our own theater projects, and we can test using the 10th graders. I'm not saying like that, but basically it's a fun experience, and everyone, the whole thing, the reason it's called 24-hour theater is we actually sleep the night at school. We sleep at school, and then the next day we like perform to the rest of the school. It's a really fun event. Yeah.
Very special, love that.
Hope I explained that well.
Yeah. Get great camaraderie with the people around you. I love that about St. John's, the opportunities that it gives. It's not just that academic focus, hardcore focus. And I teach in an international school, which is very francophone in its culture, and it's very academic, boom, boom, boom. And it's very normal to find classrooms with just individual seats of children, and there's no like, group work, not much arts. And even in Belgian society, arts and sport are very much separate. They're on a Wednesday afternoon. They're separate from regular school. So Watson John's office is great. Love it.
Yeah. I guess that leads me into the next question. So these are more just kind of general questions. So I understand that you're a French teacher and that you make videos to teach kids French and the language in general with over 13,000 subscribers. So congrats, by the way. That's a big accomplishment unto itself. My question is, did you picture yourself like in this position, like teaching French on YouTube and in actual like school when you were like in high school, like when you're 18 or 19? Did you see yourself where you are now?
Nope, not at all. Not at all. Yeah, French was probably my worst subject at school. So genuinely, I was really quite bad. And relative to other people in the school, that's the thing. I tried to speak to some of the native French speakers while I was here in French, and that was very weird, but I gave it a go. And I think you have to, when you're learning a language, is just put yourself out there and be willing to make mistakes. Going into teaching, it was basically either teaching or it was like working in a European institution or something. So it was only when I was at university that I made that choice, having had work experience in both and deciding that it was quite boring in the EU. No offense if anyone does work there, but I found that very detached from real kind of ground society. Whereas if you're teaching, I teach primary school, so I'm with kids constantly, and the interactions that you have are just they're so fun, they're so stimulating.
It's more personal, I suppose.
Very personal.
Yeah, with the
very personal, and that's great. And teaching primary school as well, like the kids love you. If you need positive affirmation,
that's why you went into teaching.
That's basically it. It was an ego trip. Yeah. No, it's great, and seeing them develop so quickly, because I teach French speakers basically English. I mean, they speak English to a high level, but seeing their growth, seeing their progress, is very rewarding, very enriching. So
I can imagine.
Yeah, I love doing that, and then doing the French teaching to English speakers online. That develops with COVID, so I didn't foresee that happening at all. But with the first lockdown, I just thought I can create a YouTube channel here where I'm teaching French to the kids I teach, and then it just kind of grew quite big across Scotland in particular at the time. And then I've tried to turn that into a business with a website where I'm making videos across Paris. I've made lots of videos for the upcoming Olympics, going to lots of the different venues.
I saw one.
Oh, cool. Yeah, it's been fun. It's been really, really fun.
I did my research.
That's been fun.
So I guess if you didn't really plan on going into teaching, like where was your head at when you were in high school? Like what did you think you want to do? I mean, a valid answer is, you're 17, 18 years old, you don't want to do it with your life. I don't know what I want to do with my life. But where do you think you're like leaning towards that?
I studied international relations. At uni, history and economics were probably my two best subjects. So something in the humanities.
Yeah.
But they're so broad, it's difficult to know exactly where that's going to lead you. And I thought, living in Brussels, that will probably open some doors. But I'd always liked doing Sunday school at my church, actually, with like the 3 to 5 year olds. That was always a lot of fun. And actually, I decided that's where my passion and my heart lay. So that's what I decided to go to. Yeah. Do you know what you're going to do? You're not sure?
That's a good question. You're turning the tables. So I know what I'm going to study and where I'm going to study. I'm going to be studying marketing at a university in the United States. It's where I'm from, in case you haven't been able to tell. It's Purdue University.
Yeah, cool. All right.
I'm looking forward to it a lot.
Cool.
It's not where I'm from exactly in the U.S. It's another state, Indiana. Stepping out of my comfort zone a little bit because a lot of the people that are a year or two older than me that are like family friends, they stayed pretty close. And actually, it's weird because all of them study chemical engineering. I don't know why. I'm gonna avoid that. But not good at chemistry. But it's stepping out of my comfort zone a little bit, like being a 7-8 hour journey away from my parents. My mom's sitting right there. Love you, Mom. But it'll be tough. I think that it'll be good though to step out of my comfort zone in terms of being a little bit further away, because that means I'll be able to spread my wings and fly, but not like R. Kelly.
Very good.
Going back, what I said in the talk earlier about going back to quite a local environment. So you're at the minute, you're rubbing shoulders with people from all over the world.
Yes.
You can go to Purdue, which might have an international edge, but my guess is going to be very American. How do you foresee that unraveling? Are you kind of excited that you get to go back to the States? Or do you think you'll miss the international aspect here? Or do you think you'll bring something to the table that other students don't have?
I like what the last thing you said. I think I'm able to bring a unique perspective because I would say at least half, if not a little over half, you're right, are American. A lot of them white. But there is also quite a large Asian community there. Quite a bit of people from Indian culture go to Purdue. But I think I'm somewhat of a unique perspective because while I do come from the United States originally, I've spent the last 4 years here, which I think is enough to kind of soak in the culture a little bit. I know not as much as if you stay 5, 6, even 10 years. But I think I will be able to add a little bit of something, a little bit more of that broad perspective, that open-mindedness that you're talking about, which I do like to pride myself in.
Good.
Yeah, no, that was a good question yourself. Thank you. I'm looking forward to it. It's gonna be different, but it'll be fun. One of my other questions was, so just going back more to high school level, at St. John's, what was something you would say you struggled with? It could be academic or socially. I was curious about that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot's been made of my sisters in the build-up to this, and I think having an expectation, quite a pressurizing expectation, because of the success that my older sisters had at the school. Not just that as well, but also, my family's very academic. So my 2 grandfathers, one went to Cambridge, one went to Oxford. My parents met at Cambridge. My 2 older sisters both succeeded here. So Ruth, very academically with 45, and then Rebecca, my second sister, was the best actress I've ever known.
She was the one that played Liesl, correct?
No, the other one actually. Rebecca basically did almost a solo play at one point. She played this. I don't know if anyone saw it. She played a lady called Claire Zachanassian, who was a rich, murderous woman who killed off 7 husbands. And the way she
sounds cool.
Massive, yeah. And the way she delivered it was just phenomenal. So I kind of had that weight of expectation around me, I would say, and I think that was always a bit difficult. And I think just generally when you're growing up in that sort of context, and also my dad working for the church meant that I always went to a church being, the minister's son. There, even on a Sunday, there was weight of expectation growing up, which in some ways I'm grateful for because it helped me to perform, and to just be a hardworking, generally quite nice, well-raised person. But then also, once you go off to university, once I did, I had to break free of that. I had to become my own man.
Yeah.
And step out and almost go through a kind of journey of self-discovery. And yeah, so my dad works at the church, but I only personally really became a Christian when I went to uni as well, when I actually discovered that for myself. And I'd say that I only really stepped out in certain other areas and dealt with certain struggles that I had as a teenager once I was kind of free of the family weight, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I suppose it might have been tough at the time, but in the long run, the pressure might have helped a little bit because you did perform pretty well in the IB, 42 out of 45. It's very respectable. Someone in my position right now, it's I would want that score.
You've got an exam tomorrow, yeah? So
I
the fact
do.
you are here is very impressive.
No, it's
impressive.
an afternoon, don't worry. And
Yeah.
it's philosophy. Dr. Castillo teaches me philosophy. That's why I'm pointing over at him. Right now, I'm philosophizing up here as I'm talking to you. It might look like I'm talking to you, but I'm actually in somewhere else.
So can you pull some strings in Geneva for you or something?
I don't know about that.
My first IB exam was on my 18th birthday.
Really?
Yeah, maths.
Happy birthday!
Yeah, I know, right? That was tough. And yeah, that night I just stayed up and watched Newcastle beat Chelsea. Chelsea, who became European champions that year, and we beat them 2-0. Happy CC. Yeah, just it's nice. You said you like to take the evenings off.
Yes.
And I think that's vital when you're in an exam season. You've got 2 years like hard work and preparation behind you. Like the most important thing in many ways is to be in the condition to be able to perform in the exam, and that's taking breaks. That's like sleeping well. My mum, she would give me brandy before bed every night because she thought it would get me off to sleep. And she didn't realise that alcohol, just before bed actually harms the sleep. Never mind. Maybe it worked.
I mean, I think you did pretty well.
Moms are never wrong.
That's all right.
Don't start giving me brandy. It's funny you said that about turning 18. You said the day of your IB exam. This was I should say, so I'm a December baby, so I turned 18 December 2023, and it was the 1 year where I didn't have an exam on my birthday because we always have like exams in December at St. John's, but when you're in 12th grade, you do your mock exams in February, so I didn't have
That was a good birthday.
Yeah, it was good. But yeah, so I guess I'll ask probably two more then, so you guys can ask some questions. Okay. This is my last one, I'd say.
Okay.
So just taking everything into account, like what would you say maybe like one or two of your like favorite memories, like memories that stood out from your time at St. John's, other than looking at all the flags on graduation?
Yeah, that was very special. Favorite memories. Yeah, I mean, I've touched on quite a few in terms of football and in terms of arts. You were student council president.
Yes.
As was I. That was cool.
Yeah.
I enjoyed getting voted in. That was quite fun. I ran a little campaign because my surname is Innes, I-N-N-E-S. So I ran a little campaign saying, vote for Guinness, and I was there at the pub at the Snug, which is now closed down, with a Guinness in my hand, except the Innes within Guinness was like emboldened. Vote for Guinness, cheers.
It's good marketing.
And yeah, there you go, it worked quite well. And cheers was like my catchphrase. You used to always mention it, motherfucker. I would always say cheers to you instead of thank you. You'd always find that hilarious. So yeah, I mean that was cool, and some of the things that we were able to do that year, like the bike racks around the school, was that year.
Really?
Yeah, weren't in that year. Yeah, they weren't in until we introduced them that year.
I'm certainly grateful for them.
Yeah,
I take my scooter into school every
Oh,
day.
great! There you go. There you go. That was probably built in 2011, 2012.
Okay.
We brought in sofas and we brought in a microwave for the kind of common room area as well. So it was a nice year.
I feel like our grade was very destructive then because we destroyed all of this. You guys brought in stuff, We're just tearing the place apart. But this was actually, speaking of student council, when I was in 10th grade, I believe, maybe Dr. Steele will know this better than I do. When I was in 10th grade, I think the 12th graders built this, or it was the summer between I was in 9th and 10th. This was actually created, and it was the student council initiative to build the Lions Den. And so when I did come in 9th grade, like I was, I guess, some of the last group to have classes with Mr. De La Cruz.
Ah, yeah.
Right here, basically.
Oh, right, really? Okay.
Yeah. So
how did you find being president this year?
it was good. Actually, I would say I always like the term. I don't know if it's super accurate, but like my magnum opus event for being student council co-president. My mom didn't like me saying that, but it was at the end of my time in 11th grade. I organized a barbecue event for the final day of school, and I owe it to like so many people. When people are getting their Oscars and they're like saying thank you to the director. My director was my mom, because I wasn't even literally planning like to bring plates. She was like, "Where are the plates?" I was like,
there you go.
Finger food, Max.
Yeah, exactly. And we probably had like 50 people helping us out. It was a big effort. There was people cooking. And it happened right over there by the sports foyer. Unfortunately, it was a perfect day in terms of the barbecue, but unfortunately it rained. But I still have a lot of good memories from it. That was probably my favorite thing I did as student council co-president. There was other things that we did. I enjoyed it.
Sounds great.
Yeah,
Great.
thanks for asking. Yeah, appreciate it.
Cool.
Okay, that's all the questions I had. Anyone else have any questions?
I have a question. They say a lot of times the value you get from your school is alumni. How often or how many people do you keep in touch with from St. John's?
Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned your best man.
Yeah, so he's the big one. I'm only loosely in touch with the rest, I would say. I'm a little bit in touch with one guy who's gone on to do some really cool things. He's Namibia's first ever sports agent. Right, Peter Hafiku.
Oh, yeah,
Really
yeah.
cool, really cool.
Yeah.
And so so he's the agent for various footballers who play for the Namibian national team. And he was on Namibian TV during the African Cup of Nations. So yeah, I'm still in touch with him a little bit. Still in touch a little bit with Joe Bambridge, great guy. His mum was the elementary school principal.
School
here back in the day.
goalkeeper.
He was very good.
And if you recall, at one time in the one of the big meetings they had in the sports, I scored a penalty past him.
There you go, things you remember.
I was given a free baseball cap for that.
Yeah, you remember that. You
Very, very
definitely remember that.
stressful. The whole sports arena full of people, and he picked me to take a penalty past the school goalkeeper, and I tricked him. He thought I was going in the right, and I put it in the left.
There you go.
Glory for Scotland.
We used to do.
What's he doing now, John?
Joe Bambridge is working for the Financial Times.
Okay.
Yeah, he's doing really well for himself in London. I think I've kept one big friend and very close friend as well. I think you really discover who your friends are when you part ways. I think sometimes you can be friends for the sake of convenience when you're in a school or when you're in university, and then when you're apart, you see who stays in touch. And often it's actually different people to those who you anticipate. Some people are much better at staying in touch with you than others. So yeah, be someone who stays in touch. That's my advice. I don't think I did
Thank
that
you.
well enough.
Oh, that's good advice.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
It's a good
So
question.
when you were talking about the environment here at St. John's that opened and encouraged and had an environment to meet new people and critically think and all the melting pot you had here, then you went to university. Many kids are going to go to universities that are not like this at all. What would be your suggestion to anybody listening, as a student or a parent encouraging their student to find that group that, not that college, university has to be exactly like high school, but how did you find a connection similar?
Yeah.
Would you say clubs or religion?
Clubs, societies, some sort of European society, I think would be a great way to go. My university was pretty international, St Andrews, so
Okay.
didn't really have to seek out in the same way. But yeah, if there are things like European societies, also if you can seek out native French speakers, something like that, and try and speak French to them, even if that's an embarrassing experience and they're like, dude, I can speak English. Like,
But we gotta try.
try it. It's so useful. My level of French when I left school really wasn't very good, and now I'm a French teacher, and largely that's because of the effort that I put in when I was at uni and beyond university and being in a relationship with a girl who lived in Paris. So there you go. That's why.
My mom's trying to set me up with a Parisian girl.
I know a few. So. Yeah, that's what I say.
More questions?
Yeah, no questions.
Do you have any, Dr. Hussein?
Well, we asked ours at the lunchtime.
We have one. Here we go.
I will only say, based on your last comments, James, I think the freedom of speech is now indeed in a difficult situation. I've been following what is happening at the University of New York, Columbia University, Yale, and now has expanded to other U.S. universities as well. And I think this is, in a sense, depicting what you have talked about today about the radicalization of the sites, but also the institutions, which have somehow not paid attention to the critical thinking, to the proportion of being respectful, and so on. And now it appears that the students are teaching the politicians how to react to all these situations of crisis that we have around the world. But specifically in this case, it is connected to the Gaza situation today. And so the being critical remains critical for society and for the world at large.
Yeah, definitely. It's just so easy to be branded as Islamophobic or anti-Semitic. It's so easy, unless you're really careful with your words. And I think what that means is that people just don't express themselves. And if they do express themselves, if they get a little bit carried away, then yeah, please come in. It's pretty sad seeing what we're seeing.
I think that's the problem is the critical thinking is a very slow conversation like this one.
Yeah.
Whereas these aren't heard, whereas violence and loudness and it is heard, and these groups are, you know, and this isn't fun to tweet about,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, I
but
guess so.
whereas that is.
You had a question?
Yeah, I don't want to stretch it on too long, but I was just curious because I read a piece in the International Educator magazine, I think yesterday actually, by a guy named Conrad Hughes, who's the Director General of the International School of Geneva, the oldest international school in the world. Yeah.
Okay.
And he wrote because he'd seen Kimberly Crenshaw speak, and she is the creator of critical race theory. And he wrote in support of critical race theory. And from what I know about CRT, you know, it's a very, it takes very much an IB perspective about, you know, looking at something through the lens of whether it's, you know, feminist or Marxist or whatever, but in this case, race. And it's been a very hot topic in the United States. And I'm just wondering if that was on your radar in the UK as well, or what your thoughts were.
Critical race theory hasn't permeated this, or hasn't divided the UK in the way that it has the US, and I don't claim to be an expert in the particular subject. I can speak probably better on Black Lives Matter, which kind of came to the forefront at a similar sort of time. I went to Boston. My sister Rebecca lived in Boston for 4 years. It's very funny because you go and everyone in their front garden, right? They've got an LGBT flag and they've got a Black Lives Matter flag. It's quite a sight, and everyone's it's just an assumption that you'll be in favour of both. And then when you actually ask African Americans across the states, what is the most racist city in America? They say Boston, because yes, we can fly the banner, but do we actually live that out? Have we actually made structural changes that benefit the lives of people who we claim to be caring about? I think the UK has generally done a decent job of this. I can compare the UK to France, if you'll allow me to go there. The UK's got a policy of multiculturalism, whereas France has a policy of assimilation. If you are an immigrant and you move to France, you are expected to become French. Right? You need to pass tests that you adhere to the values, fraternité, égalité, liberté, laïcité of the country. You need to learn French, absolutely, of course. And if you're a Muslim girl, well, you're not wearing that when you go to school. Okay, take that off the headscarf. In the UK, I mean, I taught in schools where we had many Muslim girls who wore headscarves to school, even at a very young age. The UK celebrates people's cultures in a very open and quite a beautiful manner. In some ways, there is obviously still a lot of racism that you come across, and that was very true with London riots a few years ago, and then also with reaction to George Floyd's murder that came across to the UK as well. But I find that the UK is quite a good model generally in how to actually come to understand the perspective of maybe a second or third generation black person in a way that's not just kind of tick boxy. I'm going on quite a long way here, but like if you watch just the basic Netflix show, all right, they tick all the boxes, right? And not like if you watch Emily in Paris, right? Everyone there is white except for the black gay guy, all right? Who, and they don't flesh out his character beyond the fact that he looks black and that he is gay. They don't dive into the fact that maybe his fashion tastes are informed by the fact that his parents come from Sydney. I don't know. They don't flesh it out whatsoever. And it's true about a lot of Netflix shows that I've watched. They generally whitewash others' cultures without actually digging deeper into them. I don't know much about critical race theory, to be completely honest, but I love the idea of seeing experiences of people from ethnic minorities, real perspectives, and not just what we project onto them. So yeah, those are my general thoughts. Yeah.
Thank you.
That's all right. Cool.
Mr. McDonald is now with the last part.
When we are.
What's that? Okay.